Welcome back, everybody, to For the Good podcast. This is episode 4, and this is one that me and Stevie thought was super important because we are in the season for it. We are going to be talking about Halloween today. How should Christians feel about Halloween? Should we participate in Halloween? Should we get mad at people who participate in Halloween? What should we do? How should we think? What's a perspective around Halloween? In this episode, we are going to be talking about the origins. We're going to be talking about super important stuff that you guys don't want to miss, so make sure to watch to the end. It'll probably be a little bit quicker because we don't have as much stuff to say on this topic, but we're super excited to dive in, and we have a potential future sponsor that we want to shout out, Joyride Candy. This is by Ryan Strahan. It's his company where he creates very, very good tasting candy for less sugar and no junk inside of it, no junk ingredients. So I have one of my favorites, which is the sour blue raspberry strips. They make like cherry berry ropes. They make fun drink strips. He has a lot of really cool flavors. It tastes awesome. And then over there, Stevie has like his Sour Patch watermelon take on candy, and it tastes amazing. That's like my second favorite. It kind of goes in between these two, but they taste really good. They taste really natural. Ryan Strahan, if you ever want to sponsor us, hit us up. We would love to shout you out each episode. All right. With that said,
you have to introduce our first guest. Howdy.
We told you guys with the Halloween episode that we might start looking to bring guests on. Here's the big surprise. Howie, my dog, is actually our first guest. He's going to be joining us today. My name is Vinny Gilbert. I'll be hosting, and this is my beautiful girlfriend, Stevie Paquette, who will be co-hosting with me. With that said, let's dive in. What was your take on Halloween growing up? Like, what was your family's take on Halloween? Would you participate in it? Did you think anything was wrong with it? Or were you just like, this is just like Christmas, but for dressing up?
We did used to celebrate Halloween when I was younger. We actually would host a big Halloween party every year, where we would like make crafts and like have fun food. My mom always used to make like themed food, which was always pretty fun. We always decorated, but it wasn't until pretty recently that I kind of started to be like, like, why do we put skeletons around our house or like witches and stuff like that? When I was younger, I definitely was like freaked out by a lot of things, like around Halloween, like the scary decorations and stuff. We kind of had like all of the like nicer decorations, I'll say, like jack-o'-lantern pumpkins and more stuff like that, or like happy ghosts and stuff like that, not on like the scarier end, because I was like scared of stuff like that. Something that was super fun when we did it, because I didn't really like know the full meaning of Halloween growing up, but honestly I didn't know why we celebrated it at all. I just thought, oh, we dress up, like that's the point of it, and we get candy. But every year, our neighbors actually used to do this thing called a spook trail. They had like this probably quarter mile, half a mile trail behind their house. And my old neighbor, she used to love like getting it all decorated and stuff. And then the kids would walk down, and she would get other neighbors or even my family sometimes would like help out, and they would dress up and hide in different places in the woods and kind of like jump out and scare us. So that was something that we always looked forward to, but I was always super freaked out because I startle very easily. So that was kind of how it was growing up. And then once we moved, I lived in one neighborhood for 12 years of my life, and then when we moved to the house that we live in now, we didn't really celebrate Halloween as much because we don't really have any neighbors or anything, so we don't get like trick-or-treaters at our house, and we live on a main road without sidewalks, so we didn't go trick-or-treating on our road either. But I did used to go to my cousin's neighborhood, and we would go trick-or-treating there. But I think after the age of like 14, I didn't do it anymore. I would walk with my little cousins, but I wouldn't participate anymore. And that is right around the time that I started to like feel weird about Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of the similar thing for us, except one of the biggest things was, we grew up, I think really the only difference is there was like an alternative for us each time there was a Halloween. So like we would make a thing out of, I love how I said that, there was a Halloween. We would have an alternative every time Halloween came on that day, where Roll On America actually used to like host a night. And I'm kind of blurry in remembering if it was a Christian company or like people who hosted and partnered together with Roll On America to do like an alternative, or if it was just like, hey, it's Halloween, parents are looking for places for their kids to go if they want to do parties or something like that. And they would host like unlimited laser tag, unlimited rolling, for a certain price, and you could choose to spend money on arcade and things like that. But I do also remember a distinct amount of times where we dressed up. Mainly, they always made a point on like, they never really liked the witches, death, gore part of it, because we did grow up in that Christian household, and obviously, like 99% of parents, I feel like it was kind of more of this joke that it was like these crazy fringe, like cultish type Christians who didn't, like the ones who, like the stereotype of like the homeschooled, sheltered kid. Those families didn't participate in Halloween. But I think the more and more that our society progresses to sin and evil becoming more prevalent and becoming more made known, like not hiding anymore, the more and more people are starting to go, and we're starting to question, what is this holiday that we're celebrating? And they start to go and they start to question, what are these things that we're doing in the holiday? And I think it's also coming along with this skill that a lot of us are just learning now, which is like, instead of just doing something because like we were supposed to do it, like it's just Halloween. You do Halloween just like Christmas, just like Resurrection Day. We just kind of did it. And no one really goes, where did this tradition of dressing up come from? Where did this tradition of going and trick-or-treating come from? No one really had this ability to stop and question. But I feel like as a society, as sin and evil is not hiding as much, and we're learning to start questioning things, researching things, and not just like take everything that's presented to us, a lot more people are waking up to what Halloween really is, and what is important to understand about Halloween, instead of just being like, oh, this is just another holiday that we do. And so, yeah, that was the main difference, I think, from now until when I was growing up, was we would sometimes do the Roll On America. We would sometimes trick or treat. When we dressed up, we would dress up as superheroes. But back then it was definitely more the fringe, like, oh, this family's the anti-Halloween family. But now it's like I feel more and more in the Christian sphere, at least, people are understanding why we should be careful around this idea of Halloween. And I hope that we can get into that a little bit and we can shed some light on that. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add on to that, but
I think the only other thing I would say was like, it shows the importance of knowing your, like, the reason behind why you do something.
Yeah.
And recently I've been thinking about that a lot, like even just in my day-to-day life, like why do I do each thing that I do? Mm-hmm. And some people might say like, oh, that's like thinking too much about like every single little thing that you're doing. But obviously I mean more about like bigger things. And for Halloween, it just seems kind of silly looking back on it that we participated in all those things to get candy when we could have just like gone to the store and got candy. So I think it's just really important to understand the why behind things, kind of like what you're saying. We're going to dive into what Halloween actually is and what it was initially intended to be, and kind of like what it's turned into. And then even, I feel like even more so what it is now, because like you said, when we were younger, it seemed to be more of like a fun, innocent thing. Whereas I feel like now we're getting kind of into the more deceiving times, like what we've been talking about the past 2 episodes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I completely agree. And hopefully we can shed some light on that. So let's dive into it. One of the biggest things that you'll see us do on this podcast and you'll see us promote is this idea of like kind of, I think the best way I could describe it is learn how to become discerning. And this process of discernment a lot of the time starts with questioning why you are doing the thing you're doing. And so I think discernment starts with asking yourself, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? And then the next step in discernment is, okay, what does the Bible say about the thing that I'm doing? And then the third step in discernment is, okay, what is the Holy Spirit telling me I should be doing in this season? And so I definitely do think there are things where one person might have a feeling about another thing. Instead of a feeling, I'll use the word conviction about another thing. And then there's also things where it should be applicable to everybody. So, for example, if any of you know the singer Forrest Frank, he personally chose to have his conviction be not to go to an award show. But that conviction that he had doesn't apply to everyone who did want to go to the award show. And he was very open about making people know and understand, this is just where I'm at in my relationship with God. I'm not putting this lens on every single person. So he chose personally to follow that conviction and his last step of discernment, which is, what is the Holy Spirit telling me? After he checked, why am I feeling this way? What does the Bible say about what I'm feeling? And what does God tell me about what I'm feeling? But then there are times where you go, all right, talk about murder. All Christians, the Holy Spirit never goes, you can murder this person. That's one of the things where it's applicable to everybody. And so before I dive into some of the backstory, I do want to put this out. I really get annoyed with like people who feel like they have to apologize or almost like be sorry for like explaining the truth on a situation. But with this, I want to be careful because I know there's a lot of people who maybe aren't Christians or who are Christians. I don't want it to seem like when me and Stevie are going into this, a wagging the finger at how bad of a Christian or person you are if you choose or have chosen to celebrate this holiday. Like me and Stevie said, to most of us who don't, question or do the research into things, it's a simple, kind of innocent holiday where we take time to have fun with friends. We take time to dress up. We take time to make a whole big thing of it and set our yards up. And we do it all in the spirit of fun, right? And so I don't want this to come off and be like, you're a terrible person. That's not what we're trying to say. But we do have to communicate the truth. And we do have to say, to the best of ability, how we feel the Bible speaks on issues. Whether it makes sense to us or whether it doesn't make sense to us, we choose to willingly submit ourselves to what the Word of God says on certain issues. And so for a lot of people, this is one of those things where it seems like an innocent thing. I guess you could say this person who seems like they would be like a really good friend when you just meet them, and everything looks like it's just fun and whatever, but then the innocent thing can open a door to really bad things. And just like that friend who, when you first meet them and you're becoming friends with them, they seem innocent and they seem all fun and they seem like they would be a great person to hang out with, and then all of a sudden they lead you down a really bad path because it presents itself as innocent fun in the beginning. And this is kind of how we feel. And so we're not making a how dare you, you're a terrible person, but we are shining light on ways that we could maybe help people or free people or even offer a different perspective by doing research into something that people didn't know existed. With that said, unless you have anything to add on that, because I am going to go on another long rant after this, but...
No, I think it's important that that we shared that we both actually used to participate in the same things that people participate in today. So by no means are we saying like shame on you, because we have been there also.
Yeah.
And now that we've learned, we just want to help you learn as well.
Yeah. And also, kind of to the opposite side of that, if you're a Christian who shames Christians for having convictions on Halloween, that is a shame on you moment where you have to ask yourself, if you're shaming other people for the convictions that they have and they're holding to with the research that they've done, all because maybe you don't want to have to give something up, or because you feel like we're too fringe or whatever, that is something that I would warn against. That is something that I would say you should not be looking at another Christian brother or sister and going, this is the convictions they have, and we're going to shame you because it might be calling us to a higher standard. It might be convicting us. You even saw that a lot in the Forrest Frank thing, where people did feel convicted and it was easier for them to go, oh, you're just being pharisaical, you're being a hypocrite, instead of being like, oh, maybe you're calling us to a higher standard and challenging our perspective on something. So with that said, Halloween dates back to a really old holiday and a really old tradition. I'm probably going to mispronounce this. I've heard people pronounce it multiple different ways, but the way I've heard it pronounced is Samhain. Stevie, what is the actual spelling you have for that?
Samhain.
Okay, so you can take that and you can look that up and you can open up the pathway of research into that area like we have. But basically, this was a Celtic holiday where they would celebrate by communicating to the dead. So this holiday was basically like that day that you hear Mexicans celebrate. I think it's called Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. But the whole point of this holiday, Samhain, was to contact spirits who had passed, dead people who had passed, to hopefully receive prophecies on the future so that it could help them prosper. It was also done right before winter, so it would help them know like how bad the winter was going to be, so how they could prepare for that. But the important theme on this is that this was a witchcraft, Wiccan, satanic ritual holiday that they would do, where they would contact evil spirits. And there was even times where they would offer animal sacrifices to these family members or these spirits that had passed. And they would do this all in the name of trying to receive a message from the dead. So the roots of this, I know there's some people who argue, is it All Hallows Eve? Is it this? Is it that? It actually dates back to this holiday, Samhain. Now, you ask yourselves, what about the people who say, no, Halloween's actually has Christian roots. It has a Christian holiday. These are the base roots of this tradition and this holiday, Halloween, is Samhain. But then what ends up happening is the Romans come along and they conquer this group of Irish people, this group of Celtic people who have this traditional holiday. And these Romans obviously had the religion of Roman Catholicism. And the point that they would do when they would assimilate, if you guys know this term, this process of assimilation, is believing what they believed in Roman Catholicism. They saw a threat of these people in this group that they had just conquered to be talking to and communicating with the dead. Obviously, as you know, the Bible warns against this. This Bible warns against contacting mediums, contacting psychics, and trying to reach to the dead. This is strictly prohibited in the Bible. And so these Roman Catholics came along and they said, okay, obviously this tradition was really important to this Irish Celtic people, but we don't want to take the whole thing away from them. So instead of doing all of this in the spirit of reaching to the dead, we'll do all of this in the spirit of worshiping the saints, worshiping the people who had passed away and were big figures and theologians for the Bible. And so this is where they actually transferred the name into All Hallows Eve or Hallows Eve, things like that, All Hallows Day. It was this Roman Catholics coming over, assimilating the people that they had conquered away from this belief of trying to reach out to the dead into trying to worship those who have passed, the saints of the Bible. Now, this is still something that we should be warned against and something that we should be careful of, because the Bible specifically says to not worship any other person except God. Worship only belongs to God. So even though we were moving away from reaching out and contacting evil spirits, which we know when you try to contact the dead, you're just contacting demons and the spirits that are going to trick you and deceive you. But in the spirit of that, worshiping saints and having this day be dedicated to the saints is also not the best practice for Christians, and a Christian perspective on how we view this, because it's important for us to understand our worship belongs to God. We are to have no other gods except God. And so therefore, people were worshiping the sun, the moon, the stars, saints, Apollo. They were worshiping all these different people. Even Paul, they were trying to cast demons out in the name of Paul. They were kind of cast demons out in the name of other demons. The main point throughout this in the Bible is our worship belongs to God alone. So even though they tried to assimilate them into this practice of All Hallows or All Hallows Eve or things like that, that is how we get closer to the name, as you can hear, Halloween, because Hallows Eve or All Hallows or All Hallows Eve, that sounds a lot closer to what we have today as Halloween. And obviously it transferred into that the more that, so basically we went from pagan roots to Roman Catholicism to atheism. And that's kind of like where we are now, although I do feel we are having a revival, kind of bringing us closer back to our roots, to God. But in this atheism, they said, what if we presented a holiday that stuck with this trait of all of the things that they were doing, but what if we did it without any spiritualism while still having it be very spiritual? And that's where the deceiving nature of it comes in, as it presents itself as this simple, innocent, sinless holiday where it actually has these roots into a lot of these pagan things. Do you have anything to add to that?
I was just gonna kind of say a couple things based on the deception that we're under, trick or treating. I don't know if you've.
Yeah, I was gonna get into that.
That's what I was asking. No, it's okay. I just didn't know if you were gonna mention it.
Okay, so basically, keeping up in the story, what then happens is, obviously, when religion tries to get forced on a people group, they're not very happy. And so these Irish, that is what Celtics are, Irish, right? When you have these Celtic people group who had this holiday that they really appreciated, and then all of a sudden Roman Catholics come along and go, you have to do our holiday, they're not going to like that. They're not going to like their traditional roots taken away. And so what they decided to do was, under the guise of not looking like they were still practicing Samhain, this Day of the Dead holiday they practiced, how could they still do it? And so trick-or-treating actually was something called souling that they did. And this practice that they did was they would have their little kids go out, which is, you see today, once you start getting a little bit older, if you don't have kids, people definitely start going, what are these adults trying to do? But they would have the little kids go out, and they would tell them for food or special cake or things like that, they would go to the doors of their other Irish and Celtic neighbors, and they would go to their doors and they would say to them, I will pray and reach out to the evil spirits, not the evil spirits. They didn't know it was evil spirits, but I will pray and reach out to the dead spirits of your ancestors in return if you give me this special cake, if you give me this special treat. So, a lot of this actually started from Stevie and I going, well, I think it was me. And then I ended up telling Stevie, but I started questioning myself, why do we dress up on Halloween? And why do we trick or treat on Halloween? Where does this come from? And I asked my parents, and they're like, I don't know. And you talk to people and they're like, I don't know. It's just something that we did, just something that we do. And so it stemmed from this not looking into what we're doing and just doing what we're doing because that's the thing that we're supposed to do. And so I had no idea that this whole idea of trick-or-treating stemmed from this Roman Catholics trying to switch this holiday of reaching out to evil spirits, and then them going under the guise of just, because how are you going to persecute and prosecute people for knocking on people's doors? You can't monitor their conversations. And so what would happen is that souling, which is trick-or-treating today, we would go out they would go out and they would say, we could pray and reach out to these dead evil spirits for you, the spirits of your ancestors, if you give me this food. And so that's where you have your little children go to the doors and they knock, and they either, I don't know where the trick comes from. Like, some people do toothbrushes and like the weird things like that. But they go to the doors and they say trick or treat, which is not reaching out to the dead, but they say trick or treat, and then they get food given to them. And so you see the ties of where that comes from. And what's important is, and I'm sure Stevie has a lot written on this, is there's a lot in the Bible telling us about not to hold hands and participate in things with demons. And so if this holiday all stemmed from reaching out to the dead, souling, which is trick-or-treating today, which is going out, knocking on doors, praying, and then dressing up. Where do you get this whole idea of dressing up? Well, what they believed was if they could dress up on that day, the day where there was a lot of hyper-spiritualization, where I guess you could say the spiritual realm veil was the thinnest, they thought if I dressed up in all black and I dressed up like a spirit, the evil spirits, the ones that they didn't want to reach out to, even though any spirit of the dead that they were trying to reach out to is an evil spirit, that's where that deception comes in. They thought if we could dress up and look like a spirit, we could protect ourselves from these evil spirits that were coming around. And so that's where you get this dark, gory tradition of dressing up and putting things in your yard. Is they thought that would protect them from the evil spirits on a holiday where spirits were kind of flying around and the veil of the spiritual realm was super thin. So with that said, with that history kind of and once again, go in, do more research. That's just like opening the lid on where the roots of this is from. So you can tell people, no, this actually does stem in satanic witchcraft roots. It's not a practice that stemmed in Christian roots. That's where our modern Halloween is based off of today.
I just had one more like kind of interesting fact to share. So initially it was like the Celtic priests who initiated the trick-or-treating, like going to a house and asking for food. Mm-hmm. And then if no food was given, they would put like a curse on that person's house. And so then we get, like, nowadays we bring something with us, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've all seen like those pumpkins at Walmart, like the plastic pumpkins at the little thing. So this is an interesting fact. Those Celtic priests would carry with them turnips, like the root vegetable, carved out with like faces on them, what does that sound like? A jack-o'-lantern. Yeah. And that represented the demonic spirit that they depended on, like during that time when they would like go and like put curses on the houses.
Yeah. So that kind of answers that question of like, what is the trick part?
Yeah.
And because we know what the treat part is. Mm-hmm. They give you the food, you bless them by praying to these spirits and receiving demonic wisdom. But if you don't, you have these weird little things that are so are you saying that the turnip things were the demonic spirits they depended on and that would curse them?
No, they carved faces in them and even put candles in them, like as lanterns, which this is exactly where we get jack-o'-lanterns from.
Pumpkin. Oh, interesting.
So they did that as like the face would be like a representation of the demon.
Of a spirit,
it wasn't actually like what they were using, but they just did that to represent it. So I just thought that was a little bit crazy, because I haven't carved pumpkins in a few years, but we used to do that yearly, just like as a fun thing, because that's what everybody does. But now hearing that, it's like, wait, what? Because like you would have never known.
Yeah, so basically, if you could say that in like all one sentence and connect both of those dots, are you saying the jack-o'-lanterns and the tradition of us carving pumpkins, what does that stem from?
So initially, when trick-or-treating became a thing, the Celtic priests would carry around turnips that they would carve faces in to represent the demons that they were contacting when they would put curses on people's houses if they didn't give them a treat. And so they would even put candles inside of the carved out turnips so that they could be a lantern as they walked around, which is exactly where we get jack-o'-lanterns from today.
Wow. See, this is crazy, because in the research that I did around this, I didn't even realize, like, you know, because I didn't really think about the carving aspect. Why do we carve pumpkins? But then it's like, man, that's so black and white of like, and it's always like a scary face. You try to carve, like, just recently, it's like you might put in like a president or something like that or whatever, but it was always traditionally like a scary face. And it makes sense because, you know, that's so black and white. That can only be what you just explained, because why else would we be doing something like carving out pumpkins and putting lights in them? And man, I'm kind of at a loss for words for that. That is pretty crazy. And yeah, so this leads us into kind of an iffy spectrum on what do we do as Christians, because that was all the background knowledge and the roots of what Halloween is and how we got to Halloween from where it stemmed from. One last thing that I want to kind of mention is, one, the Bible talks about not drinking from the same cup of demons and the same cup of God. And not saying not to, but we can't. And it also says we can't serve two masters. So we can't be holding the hand of one and holding the hand of another. And it also talks about multiple times not eating food sacrificed to false demons. It talks about not, you know, if you go out to dinner and they pray over the food to a false demon, don't eat that food. It says that. And it also talks about, you know, do not partake in idol worship. It talks about do not partake in parties in the temples that were sacrificed to demons. And so a question that I have for you guys is, what does Halloween seem the most like? Because there are also a lot of high-ranking Satanists, a lot of high-ranking witches who treat Halloween as the holiday of like how Christians treat Resurrection Sunday, which for most of you is Easter. You know, by the time we get around to that, we'll probably do why we call it Resurrection Sunday and not Easter. But it is Easter, but I'm calling it Resurrection Sunday because that's what it is. But the way that Christians think of and celebrate Resurrection Sunday is like the way that Satanists and witches celebrate Halloween. And they blatantly come out and they say that this holiday is like the highest ranking day on the satanic calendar, where the veil is the thinnest, and they use this and they treat it still as that Samhain. So like it's Halloween to the lay people because it can deceive the most people, but it's actually this very satanic, very hyper spiritual holiday that so many of us are accidentally participating in when we don't even know. Just like a lot of the songs we showed you in the other video, the song of Freddie Mercury singing "Let Me Go" and this saying, "In the name of Allah, we will not let you go. The father of lies has a devil set aside for me." Like, we don't even know that we're participating in this and we're bringing these things onto ourselves. So I want to put this question out there as a Christian. Yes. Does it mean that we might not participate in fun? But let me ask you this question. Where does the Bible ever say that we are to compromise our morals for the sake of fun? Because so many times I see the number one thing, the number one opposition put up against people who say maybe we shouldn't celebrate Halloween. It's never, well, this is what the origins are, and this is what the Bible says, and this is why it's okay. It's always, well, it's just fun. It's just good, innocent fun. And I want to ask you guys, where are we in the Bible entitled to compromise our Christian morals in the sake of fun? We're never commanded to compromise what God calls us to, the standard that God calls us to as Christians, for the sake of fun. And so, yes, we might miss out on a party. We might miss out on dressing up. We might do things like that. But we're doing it all in the name of worshiping God. We're doing it all for the sake of trying to respect God and the standard that he calls us to. And so we definitely, Howie, come here. Yeah, so we don't want to just compromise this for the sake of fun, is the main point that I was trying to get out. CV, do you want to?
Yeah, I had a couple verses written down if you want me to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to help Howie first.
So, So the first one is 1 Corinthians 10:20-21, which is what you were mentioning earlier. It says, "The sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God, and I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons."
Yeah.
And then this other one is from Galatians 4:8-10. And it's Paul cautioning against turning back to practices tied to former pagan observances. So it says, "Formerly, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those who by nature are not gods. But now that you know God, or rather are known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those
weak and miserable
forces?"
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. Like the Bible, and we'll probably bring one of our friends on because this is a topic that we really like to get into. But the Bible is very specific about mentioning that God is the one capital G God, but there are other lowercase g gods, what we would call spirits. But there is a hierarchy, and we'll get into that. But there are other spirits and lowercase g gods over our world. And so these gods, these evil spirits that are working against the one true God, the one and only God, actually do exist. And so in the Bible, when you go and read the passage on the statue of Dagon, where it talks about this statue, this false and demonic statue dedicated to this god of Dagon, and then it was put in the same presence and perimeter of the Ark of the Covenant, which is where God resided with his people. And every time they come in, the statue would fall over and was broken. And so this is a representation of God cannot be in the same presence as another false god. So although this was a statue, there was actually, and the statue itself has no power, but there are evil spirits behind the statue that they're worshiping that do exist. And so this was showing that even though the Ark of the Covenant was just a structure put next to another structure, that structure, the statue of Dagon, kept falling over and would shatter because it was a spiritual battle. It was a spiritual fight. And so when we ask ourselves, what is Halloween celebrating? What are we celebrating? And we see the roots and we see all the practices tie back into satanic practices. Ask this question. If the Bible tells us we cannot drink of the cup of demons and of God, we cannot sit at the table of God and the table of demons, we cannot mix and commingle with demons and Christians, and we're going to these parties and we're celebrating Halloween, and we know the roots of Halloween, are we not commingling with evil spirits? are we not surrounding ourselves with demons? Are we not participating in the practices of the pagans, turning back to the fake, false, weak gods that they worshipped? The spirits that do exist, the spirits that by God are given power in this world, they do exist and they are present. The question we have to ask ourselves is, when we're doing these things, we're dressing up, we're trick-or-treating, we're going to parties, and it's fear, evil music, death, gore. A lot of times too, even hypersexual has been introduced into Halloween outfits. When we're participating in this, but we're also calling ourselves Christians, the Bible specifically says, do not participate in those things to not provoke the anger of God. And so what that means is we're called not to participate in those things. One, because we're called to set a higher standard and represent ourselves as Christians, Christ followers, disciples of Christ. But also, why, when we serve a God as powerful and as holy as the God that we serve, Jesus Christ, why are we going to participate and false idol worship of weak and miserable forces that God resurrected and freed us from, set us free from? Don't you think that that would provoke the anger of God? The best way that I could put it is, me and Stevie have been dating for 5 years now. The last podcast that we released was that day. And the question that I would ask you is, say that I never committed like adultery on another person, but would you not be mad if I went around and started flirting with other women? I started touching and looking at and flirting and just being overall inappropriate with other women. Would you not be mad?
Yeah, I would. And I think that is a really good way to put it, because sometimes I think it can be difficult for people to understand what you're saying in like simple terms.
Yeah.
But I think also it's not meant to be put in simple terms. It's a very serious thing that I sometimes think people take for granted and don't respect.
Yeah.
And not to like go back to this, but I didn't finish that verse, like verse 10 in there. It says, you are observing special days and months and seasons and years. And then it says, I fear you that somehow I have wasted my efforts on you.
Yeah.
And so that reminds me of like a lot of other things too that Christians participate in, like months that people participate in, that I think this should just be like a reminder of what the Bible actually says and not what our feelings say, because it's very easy to say like, oh, well, they're not doing anything wrong. Like, I feel bad for people who like get shamed on for doing whatever. But it's like, no, once you know that that's wrong, there's no excuse. Kind of like what you're saying about if you're in a relationship with someone, you know it's wrong to go and do what you were just saying, so you're not going to do it. And I think the same thing is true with your relationship with God, except in my opinion, it's even more serious. Yeah. But it's something that we often look past because God doesn't immediately say, you just did that wrong. Whereas in a relationship, we would hear that immediately. And I'm not saying that he doesn't do that. I'm saying we don't hear him doing that, because often if you're participating in these things that we know we shouldn't be participating in, that means we're most likely not in tune with God and we're already not listening to him.
I love that. I don't think you could say it better, because like if me and you are really healthy in our relationship, we're communicating about everything. We're in touch about everything. We're listening to each other and we're not just trying to like say whatever. We're like very in touch. We're communicating and we're listening to each other. And so say I didn't know there was a certain type of like flirting that upset you. If I'm in tune with you and I'm listening to you and I'm communicating with you, I would participate in that, and you would be like, hey, you've not done anything, so it's not a big deal, but like I just want to let you know this really bothers me when you communicate this way. Say with other females. Now I have a choice to then listen or to continue doing that. But if we're in a healthy, good relationship, I will hear that initial conversation and go, okay, then I have to change. I have to cut these things out. Maybe it will be less fun for. Maybe I love communicating, making people laugh, making people feel blah, blah, blah. Maybe it will be less fun for my social life, but I'm doing it because I love you. Now think about the conversation as conviction. God will convict us through the Holy Spirit when we're doing things he doesn't want us to do. And sometimes it will be shaking hands with somebody and we just get an off feeling. We shouldn't participate with this person. Maybe we go to somebody's house and we just feel like this impending doom, this like, why am I here feeling? When you're in tune with God, he's not going to set you up to fail. He's not going to put you out into the world and just be like, learn the hard way. That's not his heart. He will do that sometimes, but it's not his heart to just do that. He'll convict you, and it's dependent on how close we are to our relationship with God, where we can listen to these convictions. Like, the healthier our relationship is, the more we're communicating, and we can solve a lot of the problems before they become bigger issues. And yeah, if you read a lot of the times in the Bible, like, we really, like, Paul's kind of like, sometimes I fear, in this verse he says, sometimes I feel like I've wasted all my efforts on you. Like, I come and I write to you and I tell you about what a sacrifice God did. What amazing gift it is that he would give his life for us. Yet you guys can't give up a holiday. You guys can't stop practicing the satanic and pagan rituals of false idol worship and demon worship. You can't give up a meal because that meal was sacrificed to false idols and false demons. Sometimes I feel like I've wasted my efforts. Like, maybe you guys haven't, and this is Paul, I'm speaking as Paul, maybe you guys haven't experienced the revelation of the gift of what God did for us, but the God of the universe, who created the universe, undeservingly on our part gave his life, and you guys can't give up a holiday. You guys can't give up a meal. You guys can't stop practicing and participating in the things that the pagans participate in because they worship other false gods. This is like, imagine if I cheated on Stevie. I committed adultery on her. She forgave me, and then I couldn't stop flirting with other women. That's the same thing. That's the same thing. She goes, I've given literally my life and my right to leave you. I've given that up and I've forgiven you. This hasn't happened, by the way, but I've forgiven you, and you can't even stop the patterns of flirting that lead to sin. And that's exactly what we do in Christianity. A lot of times we take for granted that, you know, God doesn't Ananias and Sapphira us where it strikes us down, but it's the same God as the Old Testament. And that judge and that judgment and that wrath will be reserved for when we die. And the Bible says we'll have to make an account for all the good things and all the bad things we do at the end of the day. And our hope is in that God's grace covers us, because it says love covers a multitude of sins. But do not think that you will not provoke the wrath of the same God of the Old Testament, because it's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. Right? So don't think that participating and flirting with sin, the Bible describes sin as a mistress, right? Literally as a mistress. So don't think that participating with and flirting with this mistress of sin, of participating in parties where people are dressing up as death and gore and false idols and demons and satanic rituals and fear and evil and skeletons, and it's literally everything dark, gory, gloomy, fear, satanic. That is everything that is practiced and celebrated on Halloween. The more dark, the more spiritual, the more demonic, the more death, the more gore you go, the better you do on Halloween. This is not something that we should be participating in. This is not something that we should be succumbing our kids to. This is not something that we should be doing because we don't want to provoke the wrath of the God who freed us from these same spirits that are being worshipped.
Yeah, I think that now, like, kind of for like the next steps. Like I don't want any of you watching to be like, well, now what do I do? So I think probably the next best step would honestly be to pray about it, because God will convict you about it if he needs you to be convicted about it. Don't take this as like, oh, we're conspiracy theorists. Like, please look into it, as Vinny said at the very beginning, because I think what you'll find will surprise you. I feel like I said that same thing last week. But seriously, like, do some research on it, because we didn't know these things either until we did research on it. And then when we found this out, we were like, wow. And God still convicts us about things all the time. Sure. So don't feel like, oh, well, I haven't been convicted about it, so it's fine. Like, ask God and say, hey, do you think what I'm doing around this holiday is wrong? Because I know people who hand out like little baggies, Christians who hand out little baggies to the trick-or-treaters, like with information about maybe going to church, or information with like the gospel story.
Some people do Bible verses. They hand out Bible verses.
And so something like that, where you're representing Christ
for sure
and kind of bringing light to such a dark day, I think God's totally happy with that. And so I'm not saying like, don't talk about Halloween, like don't even open your blinds that day. Like, that's definitely not what I'm saying. But I think that for each person, it goes person to person, and everybody can have their own convictions about it. So definitely talk to God about it, get into the Word, and honestly just do some research on like the history behind it.
For sure. And I wanted to just kind of make one more point, which is on Resurrection Sunday, do Satanists participate and celebrate? And do witches and people who practice witchcraft on Resurrection Sunday, do they participate in that holiday? They don't. It's like for where me and Stevie are at right now, it's like their Halloween. It's like, this is a day we have to be careful of, and we have to make sure that we're doing our rituals, and we have to make sure that we're being super careful and super on guard in witchcraft, which sounds crazy saying it like that, but that's how they think. But yet on Halloween, it is the highest day on their satanic calendar. There's enough people through social media who have come out. Go and look up X witch, X psychic, X Satanist take on Halloween. This is not an innocent holiday. This is a holiday that is super deceiving, through the sense of most people don't know the origins. Most people don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Most people don't even know. I just think I like the feeling of fear, because it's like that adrenaline rush, and it's like, I love getting together with friends and dressing up in costumes and blah, blah, blah. It's just another day where I can do that. Satanists, witches, psychics, the occult themselves recognize this day as the highest day on their calendar. So for us as Christians, I'm not even speaking to the world. To the world, I hope that you would hear something like that, and that might make you go, man, this is really black and white, because a lot more in our society lately, through a lot of the events that have been unfolding, people are waking up to this idea that good and evil does exist. But I want to ask you a question. If they don't celebrate Resurrection Sunday, and they make sure they're on guard on that day, when it comes to Halloween, why as us as Christians are we celebrating with the pagans? Why are we celebrating with the witches and the Satanists and the occult? And that's kind of the point, like Stevie said, that I want you to pray about and I want you to think about is, why would I be participating in, now that you know what it is and what the roots of it is and the origins of it is and the history of it is and what all these practices tie back to, I hope that you guys would pray and say, why would I want to do something like this just in the name of fun? And it might start to show you, and it might start to reveal to you that this whole thing, quote unquote, fun, is actually an idol in our lives. Where, why do I go out and get drunk? I'm just having fun with my friends. Why do I go out and party and be in places that I shouldn't be in as a Christian, representing witness to Christ? Oh, because it's fun. Why do I not listen to worship music, but I listen to secular music and I blah, 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 and I do all these things and I don't really focus on the Bible, but I participate and I put all these fun things together. Oh, did you catch it? Because they're fun things. And you start to realize that so much of the reasons and the negative things that happen in our life, we bring onto ourselves because we idolize this idea of fun. But the Bible says to have no idols before God, to have no idol worship in our lives. But we don't even realize, we think of idol worship as, I erect this golden statue and the statue's name is Baal and I'm praying to Baal and I'm sad. No, idol worship looks like anything that we put in our life over God. And so if we're compromising morals and we're participating and coming along with the enemy for the sake of fun, then that means God goes here and fun goes here. And so kind of what me and Stevie are hoping that we can show through this is it's worth missing out on the fun to be faithful to God. So maybe we can make a shirt, for the good, faithful over fun. But it's way more important to be faithful and sacrifice fun than to sacrifice your faithfulness for fun. And that's kind of my view on Halloween. And like Stevie said, it brings up this idea. Okay, if you're dressing up your kid as a superhero and, I didn't know about the jack-o'-lantern thing. So, like, you're not going around with a jack-o'-lantern thing, but you're going around with a plastic bag. Your kid's dressed up as a superhero. Is it wrong to get candy? I don't know. That's something that you have to pray about. That's something that you have to ask. Where's the line in the sand when it comes to Halloween? Is it, okay, maybe I'll dress my kid up in a superhero outfit and I'll be careful about the attire that we have on. Nothing evil, nothing demonic, nothing worldly. Okay, maybe there's a line there where that's not wrong. But also the thing that you have to ask yourself is, because this is the same thing for me, a lot of the times I didn't even want to go trick-or-treating as a kid because they would have scary decorations that when you would walk by them, they would jump out and scare you. And so a lot of the times I was just doing it because that was the thing that we were supposed to do. And I didn't even enjoy it. I was terrified to do it. So ask your kid, is it right that I'm subjecting my kid to potentially being in this state of fear, to being scared, seeing scary decorations? Because you might not set up decorations. You might not set up and dress your kids up in scary outfits. But if you know other people are you subjecting yourself and your kid to those scary and evil things too? So this is what we mean. This is what discernment looks like. We break it down and we ask ourselves, is there something wrong with, maybe that's why churches do trunk or treats where they have candy and they know we're dressing up or not dressing up and we're just doing that. But this also shines a light on something that really infuriates and bothers me, is the lack of choice that the church gives on a day like this. Because a lot of the times a church can't put together an alternative for Christians. And a lot of the Christians who would pursue that alternative just end up going along with the world. And so if you're in that position of leadership and you're running a church and you're shepherding a flock and you're not giving your flock and your sheep an alternative, you're not giving them an outlet to not participate in the ways of the world, or you're allowing them, because a lot of the times sheep walk off of cliffs because they don't know what's on the other side of that ledge. They're not in the know, but the shepherd knows, and so they hit him with the stick so that they don't go. But if you're not there and you're allowing your sheep to just walk off the ledge because you don't present an alternative, or you don't think it's important, or you don't think you have the time or the energy to do that, that really bothers me, because so many people could be saved from something like this. And imagine if you did that, you put that event up and you paired that with preaching and training and guidance on why are we presenting an alternative, and you're waking people up. You're giving the sheep that you're shepherding the knowledge. So I challenge you, if you're in a position of leadership as a church, to make your voice heard on this issue, because it is important. You heard throughout this podcast all the reasons why we shouldn't, why it's important. And we don't want our sheep as shepherds, because I do think that representing this podcast, the people that are listening this, we are kind of shepherds in the sense of what we say you guys are listening to. And so I ask myself on this, am I presenting alternatives to things of the world that people participate in that lead them into sin, that lead them into falling, whether they know or they don't know? If you aren't presenting that alternative, it's worth it. It's worth the extra time. God will make a way. And if you don't do it, I think he'll look down on you and be like, did you steward that position properly? Would you rather have time off, or would you rather time off of with like not doing events on holidays? Would you rather have things like that so that you could be more comfortable? It's worth finding the volunteers to put something together so that you protect your sheep that you're shepherding. It's important, and God will look down and he will see the stewardship of that position. And so that's my message to leadership. That's my message to churches who don't have an alternative. Really look into possibly doing something like that, because it's worth it.
I just have one verse
to
close out with, if that's
it.
fine.
I love it.
It's Ephesians 5:6-15. Kind of long, but I'll read it. It says, "Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore do not be partners with them, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, and find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful to even mention what the disobedient do in secret, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. That's why it is said, 'Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.' Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil."
Yeah. Man, why do we even need to have a whole podcast? And that verse in and of itself says it best. We're children of light. And so that's why me and Stevie, like, we know people who love some of the musicians we talked about. We know, in last episode, we know people who love Halloween. We don't come on and just go, we want to ruin and shame and make these people feel embarrassed to do something that they enjoy. But we recognize that we're children of light. And part of being children of light is calling out and exposing the darkness, calling out the shameful deeds that the people who are in secret do in the darkness, because they're leading people astray. Remember, we talked about a little bit in last episode, the enemy's so mad because we are in the position that he feels he deserves to be in. He deserves to be God's most prized possession. He deserves to be God. He deserves to have power and be reigning. And so he decides to try to deceive and hurt as many as God's most precious creation as he can. And so we're calling that out because it is all tied back to his deceiving schemes, his deceitful schemes. Later in the next chapter in Ephesians, he goes on to say that our wrestle is not against flesh and blood. And so when he says we are in the days of evil, what he's meaning is we are in the days where the enemy, the evil one, is actively coming against the children of God. The enemy and the evil one is coming against us. Do we want to pass the basketball to the other team? Do we want to give him chances? Or does the Bible say, do not give an open door for the enemy to get a foothold? Do not give an open door for the enemy to come in and cause havoc and wreak mayhem in your life. Then secondly, we're children of light. We have nothing to do with the darkness. We should not be having anything to do with participating in the darkness. And like me and Stevie said, so much of what Halloween is darkness. It's just pure darkness. Demons, evil, witches, darkness, skeletons, blood, death, killing, horror movies. Man, we could do a whole nother episode on horror movies because basically apply the same logic of what we talked about into Halloween into horror movies. Is this something we should be filling ourselves with? But that's all Halloween is. And so as children of light, we have nothing to do with children of darkness, children of the enemy, children of the devil. And so if you are a Christian and you do stand firm on your convictions and people call you out, I challenge you to respectfully, don't attack someone who doesn't know, but respectfully push back and say, now that I know the origins, now that I know what the Bible speaks about what we should do, yes, my fellow brother in Christ, or yes, my fellow sister in Christ, this is why I'm not going to do it. And I'll take the time to explain it to you to hopefully save you from that too, to hopefully close that open door in your life also. And so if you find yourself being judged and shamed by Christians for standing on that, explain to them why it's important to you. Do it in love and do it in truth, right? It's that balance of truth and love. But with that said, we hope that makes sense. Why can't I say that? We hope that makes sense. We hope that you guys can see our hearts. And we hope that you know that the main theme is, as children of light, we have nothing to do with children of dark. As children of God, we have nothing to do with participating with demons. As following the one true God, we have nothing to do as following false gods in this world. What does the Bible say? Perfect love casts out all fear. Perfect love casts out all fear. Why are we intentionally subjecting ourselves and our kids to fear? This is not something that we should be doing as Christians, and it's not something that we should be participating in. Pray, go through the process of discernment, and figure out where you and your family leans on this subject. For me, I'll quote Jeremiah when it says, "For me and my home, we will serve the Lord. We won't serve the devil. We won't participate with the devil. We won't contact. We won't mingle. We won't participate in the things of the devil. For me and our house, we will serve the Lord." And so that's kind of where we land on that. Taking a deep breath from that, we're going to go into our segment of asking each other silly, fun questions so that you guys get to know us a little bit more. And real quick before we get into that, hopefully we're going to be looking on to bringing guests in. So a lot of you guys who are listening, you know us personally. If there's someone that you're interested in, if there's someone you want to hear, if there's recommendations, please comment down below on who you want us to bring on. If there's people you want us to bring on and ask about their perspective of things. Otherwise, we're just going to bring on some guests and we're going to have a fun, cool conversation with them. Finally, fill some seats. Other than our hopeful sponsor, Joyride, Ryan Trahan. I'm just being funny, but all right. Stevie, do you have your question prepared? Or do you want me to give yours?
I do, but you might have answered it.
Uh-oh.
Or you might have to contradict what you said, but it's okay.
What's your question?
Well, we talked a lot about trick-or-treating, so that made me think of candy. So I was going to ask you, what's your favorite candy?
Oh, no. Okay. My favorite candy.
I didn't know if you were going to say Joyride or if you were going to go against Joyride.
My favorite candy is Ryan Trahan's Joyride Blue Raspberry Strips.
No.
Also, no, I'm just kidding. My favorite candy, Joyride's up there. It's good. I thoroughly enjoy it. But I think I have to go with Reese's Sticks. Reese's Sticks or Sour Patch Kids. Sorry.
It's the Airhead Extremes.
Airhead Extremes.
Those are good.
Those are amazing. It's one of those two.
Do you like the bites better or the long strips?
The strips.
I like the bites better than the long strips.
The strips are just superior. So, they... Honestly, it's weird to put it like this, but like on a different day, I'll be craving one or the other. And so it's honestly dependent, but one day it could be Reese's Sticks, another day it could be the Airhead Extreme Strips. For you, the question that I had is a lot less serious than the one I asked you last episode. If you guys didn't catch the one that I asked her, you're going to want to hear it listen to the end of the episode of last episode, if you could have any superpower, what would you have?
To a new group of people, you get
Yeah.
asked this, and I always am like, I have no clue, but maybe I've never been asked this question, only me. I've only been asked this question like in a group setting where then I like steal somebody else's answer.
Not today.
So, I don't, maybe like teleportation would be cool.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Cool. Imagine not having to get ready. You could just get ready and then.
That's true.
But then let me ask you this.
Okay.
I feel like a predicament comes out of that. The people who live the closest to the places they have to be are the latest. And so if you knew you did not have a drive and you didn't have to get ready, would that just make you be late? Because instead of 30, 10, 20 minutes before, you're like, oh.
That's not true, though, because I'm usually late and I usually live the farthest away.
Well, then there's the people who are just late, regardless. We're not going to say who that is.
It's me. It's okay.
Teleportation's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and my favorite candy is... that's a hard question, but the candy that I've been eating the most is Joyride Cherry Berry Ropes.
Ryan Trahan. So yeah, no, awesome. Okay, so
because it's supposed to be better for you, and I used to have a candy addiction, so tried to fix that.
Used to is an interesting term.
I don't eat that much candy anymore.
Fair.
But I want you to answer the superhero.
All right.
I mean superpower.
I think I would have to go with. Okay, listen, I'm a nerd.
I know.
So the question, I have an unfair advantage. Because what you don't know is I can answer with one power that gives you basically all the powers. Super speed. Super speed, you can essentially have flight. Because in super speed, if you run at a certain speed and jump, you jump further. So you can basically fly.
That's kind of like how people say chickens can fly, but they can't.
Secondly, you can actually turn invisible with super speed because you can like shake what it's called as phase. You can phase because you're vibrating so fast that you actually phase in with the particles of the air. So you can turn invisible. You have super strength because I don't know if you know this, but if you punch something at a faster speed, it's going to be stronger. Third, fourth, okay, that's where I'm going to end it. I could give you and list off why super speed is the most overpowered.
That's a question that you really like and a question that I really don't like. And that was very telling of why. Because I was like, I guess this. And you were like, this, and these are all my reasons.
Yeah, you can see why I asked it because I had a whole list of things ready. I'm prepared for that.
Very true.
Watch The Flash, all 7 seasons, and he will tell you why super speed is the most overpowered answer. That's how I actually knew.
Overpowered?
Yeah.
Oh.
Overpowered. Yeah. All right. With that said, guys, we are going to sign off and hopefully have a guest on for next week. If we don't, we'll just have another topic ready. But please comment down below any questions, opinions, or guests you want us to bring on. If you guys are other podcast listeners and you want us to come onto your podcast, talk about topics, let us know. We'll probably be pursuing that as an option. Please like, please subscribe, please share to everyone that you know so that we can grow. If anyone has a contact with Ryan Trahan, let them know that we will sponsor your candy. We will shout it out.
If that ever was going to happen, now it won't because you said it too much.
He'll watch it and he'll be like, you're trying way, way too hard.
Exactly.
You miss all the shots you don't take. All right. With that said, we'll sign off and we'll see you guys next week.
We're not putting this in.